Hello. Okay, today we are here with my colleague in the Wilkes MFA program, playwright, publisher, teacher, Jean Klein. And welcome, Jean.
Hi, Phil. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
We were just chatting beforehand. Both Jean and I have been with the program since its inception, and so we've seen a lot of the growth of the program. And certainly one of the things that's been most satisfying, I think, for both of us has to watch the evolution of our different enterprises, Etruscan Press and Blue Moon Plays. Tell us a little bit, Jean, about Blue Moon and what you do in publishing plays.
Well, the idea started probably years ago, back before the internet. And I always belonged to playwrights groups, and we always thought, wouldn't it be nice to have our own catalog or publishing company, because we all knew people who had really great plays that weren't being picked up by the big guys. But we didn't have the capital to send out catalogs and contact people and do all that kind of stuff. So it was sort of just talked about for a while. And then along came the internet. Yay! And we realized we could do all this kind of on a shoestring, and we had somebody who would do a website. So that started back in 2003. And I had a partner at that time. And so we sort of began collecting scripts, and we had somebody who would do the website. And so we started out that way. And we were largely, at that time, I think, a market for high schools and colleges, educational kinds of things. And that was what we were looking for. And then we started to grow, and we got kind of more interesting scripts, more scripts that were a little bit edgy. And so it sort of started to take on a life of its own. It was known back then as half scripts. So our first 40 plays or so were under half scripts. And then, as partnerships do, we had a parting of the ways because we didn't quite agree on how businesses should be run. And I said, okay, I'm going to go off and do Blue Moon Plays, and I did. And that was meant to be, and still is, an imprint that deals more with edgy scripts, specifically scripts that stretch the stage, scripts that are a little bit more experimental, that push the envelope, and specifically, I think, looking for diverse casts, different ethnicities, that actually show people in the homes that they live in the cities that they live in, rather than colorblind casting, where you put a role that was written for a white person and you cast it with an African American actor, which is sometimes successful, sometimes not. But I think what we need to see, at least in terms of Blue Moon Plays, is a representation of the entire spectrum of who makes up America, because that I think is the only way we're going to normalize or equalize society, is to see images. Because I remember that, going back to my very young years when I was growing up, there was not a black face on television or anybody else other than white middle class Betty Crocker. And what I've noticed in Madison Avenue recently, and God knows I don't want to praise Madison Avenue, but here goes. I've noticed that a whole lot of commercials now have very diverse casting among them, and I think that's the kind of thing that has an impact on America. So that's kind of what Blue Moon is, and then we recently added another imprint, which is Unicorn Bay Press, which is devoted primarily to poetic dramas composed of poetry, spoken word poetry, any poetry that says I need to be on the stage. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Wow, that there's such an interesting approach, and aside from diversity, which I think you've really embraced with Blue Moon Press and been a leader in that area, but also the fact that here on the one, it's experimental enough just to rely on scripts as opposed to stage presentations. I mean, that's a breaking of the normal conventions, and here you are doing that with plays which themselves break conventions. Right. And so my question would be, where is the audience for that? Who do you market to?
Well, we do have some plays that kind of are geared toward, the standard audience. Because we do want to sell, we have to make a living, we have to pay the bills. And so we do have some standard scripts, which we kind of like to think are kind of above the average anyway. I just recently published a new Christmas Carol. I didn't think there could be one, but somebody sent me one, and it's a version of Christmas Carol, but it's one which parallels the evolution of Scrooge with the evolution of Charles Dickens. Hmm. So we see Dickens and his family on stage with Scrooge and his family kind of living parallel lives, and it's just a fascinating take on it. So we recently published that, and that I look at as a commercial script, well written, but it's a commercial script to go, I would think, primarily to community theaters, schools, high schools, colleges, and so on. So we do publish that kind of play. And what was the question again, Phil?
Well, no, I was just pointing out that, usually when I think of plays, I never really thought about the distribution of the script as a physical,
the market.
Physical thing. It never occurred to me to wonder how a play may have gotten chosen by a community group or by some experimental theater. And clearly that's part of what you're doing. Making these plays
Google
available.
plays a big part in that, and I'll deal with Google as a separate entity. But our other market, which has been reasonably successful, are kind of current topical things that deal with current issues like racism, violence in the streets, guns, and so on. And one play that's really started to move out. We have a one-man version and a two-character version of Nat Turner.
Oh.
And the play actually takes place in the mind of Nat Turner between the time that sentence is pronounced on him and he hangs. Hmm. And it's a revisiting of his life through his own eyes, of asking, have I done the right thing?
I see.
And the reason I like this play so much is that African American people walk away from it saying, oh, well, he's not, I still get why he did what he did, but he's not quite the hero that I thought he was. Mm-hmm. And white people walk away saying, wow, I thought he was a villain, but now I see why he did what he did. And so I say, whoa, and I've heard that from audience members when I've seen the play. And in December, it was originally scheduled in December. In February, it's going to be done live in Alabama and simultaneously virtually done in California by another theater.
Wow.
Now, don't ask me the technology, but that's what they contracted for. So I had to get busy and write a contract for how you handle the rights for virtual showings. So I'm in the middle of all that process. I'm not through that yet. But
so, Jean, when you produce the physical book,
yes,
then the process is to really distribute that to people who might produce the play. Is that right?
Most of that is done only on request when they come to the website.
Okay.
So they'll come to the website. I have available for all the scripts. I have available a print copy. Which is its own nightmare of getting that done in the way that we need to have it done. They can order a review copy, which is downloadable, which they get immediately. If they just order the review copy, it's got a watermark on it across each page that says "Do not copy."
Right.
To protect it, they can order a multi-copy PDF, which is a clean copy that they have the right to make sufficient copies to do the play.
I see.
So if they need 20 copies, they can copy that many, and that's kind of on trust. And then there are performance rights. They have to also pay a fee for each performance.
And do they pay that fee to Blue Moon, or do they pay that? So you have bought, and not only have you bought the manuscript as a what I would call, just a book.
Yeah.
But you've also bought the rights to lease it to
Yes.
various places. So there's kind of two things going on at the same time. On the one hand, somebody might say, hey, I want 20 copies for my class, or I just want a copy to read. And then some other person might say, hey, I'm running a little theater here,
Yeah.
and I found this play. How do you drive traffic to Blue Moon?
Primarily on the internet.
Okay.
And for that, I have help. I have to say, I finally, for 10 years, I could do it all. From 2003 to about 2013. Our webmaster died three months into the process of our existence.
Mm.
So we were 3 months or 3 years, 3 years old, I think. And he died. So there, my partner and I were on the website. And I said, well, either we shut down or I become the webmaster. And I had no training in being the webmaster.
Oh, my
so we
goodness.
decided I would be the webmaster. So until about 2013, I was the webmaster and created and constructed the website and did all of that. We worked through PayPal and that was okay. But then it got terribly, terribly complicated. And I just was way beyond my pay grade. I just said, I can't do this and do justice to it. So that was basically the falling out. My partner did not want to go in that direction. She did not want. So anyway, I said, okay, if it's going to stay alive, it's going to have to be this way. So I belong to several playwrights groups, and I was looking around for somebody who could come on board as a consultant and help me do a new website, establish Blue Moon Plays, because I wanted to make some big changes if I was going to make any change. And I found a wonderful woman who lives in Scotland, and she's a playwright. So this has always been a publishing site by playwrights for theater. And so this is what she does as a living. She builds websites and does all these site optimization and all that kind of stuff. So she's been my mainstay throughout this whole process because it's where you place on the page on Google and what people are typing in. So you have to kind of second guess what people are typing in. Are they typing in plays for high schools, or are they typing in high school plays? And there are all kinds of, or plays for Christmas plays about, I've had a query string that looked like play for 6 characters with 7 sets or something. It gets very specific. So you have to figure out which of those key strings are going to help are going to come to your site, and which you should use when you put them into the alternate text. And
right.
So we worked together on that, but I couldn't have done that whole business. And then social media. If you're not on social media, you're dead.
Okay, that's very interesting because, in fact, from my point of view, I've been struggling with this. A lot of attention gets put on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit and Instagram, and the younger folks, of course, are real familiar. Right. And we've had interns, and maybe you may have had some internet type interns. Yes. Also.
I have one yet now.
So they know all sorts of stuff, but I can't get anybody to quantify, at least for book publishing, how that translates into sales. Now it seems to me like your situation is a lot different, because when people are looking at the genre of okay, I want to play a Christmas play, they're going to get driven to your site, perhaps, we hope.
Yes.
That would never happen with Etruscan. In other words, they're not going to put, I'm looking for fiction, or I'm looking for fiction about, there's so much fiction and poetry being published that it would be really hard for us to get high up on that algorithm.
I'm not sure how you would do that.
Neither am I. But instead, of course, what we do is rather traditional social media type, presence. We have a web page. Obviously, we have Facebook page, and we spend a lot of time on it. But at the end of the day, while it's fun for us, at least, I go to the Facebook page and look at this. We have this going on. I really can't say, and I haven't heard anybody tell me authoritatively how that translates into people buying books. And in your case, it seems like it's a different model.
It's a different model, and I can't explain it, but it actually does work for yours. We used to have a little cabaret theater down here called the Venue on 35th, and it had an open mic night for poetry Mondays. And there was a guy on there who was a fairly good poet, but a kind of spoken word.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a master at the internet, at social media. And he was all over Twitter, all over Facebook, all over here. And he was making money as a poet.
Really?
I said, what is this? People making money as poets, you know?
Wow.
So, I mean, it is out there, and I don't quite explain it. I just know that we spend a lot of time researching what people are typing into their computers. But then I also send the other thing that you have to have if you're doing this as a business. And I think your question that you ask yourself when you look at a manuscript may be different than the question I ask myself. And I think the question you ask yourself is it good enough for Etruscan press? Is it of literary value enough?
Right.
My question is, can I sell it?
Right.
You know, which doesn't mean I take garbage just because I think I can sell it. But so it has to meet a certain standard. But there have been times when, you know, one of the groups that I sell to a lot are senior citizens because nobody else is meeting their needs at the senior facilities. And they have these little drama groups. And they sit around and do readings, and they do plays and productions. And I'm also available on the telephone because they don't understand the internet.
Right.
Spent 3 hours yesterday talking to a woman who was actually younger than I am, who didn't understand the internet. And I was walking her through what script she needed to choose for her group, which turned out to be not only Jewish, but Hasidic also. So they needed it very narrow. So I said, well, let's look at all the scripts we have and we'll go through them. And you don't get that kind of service elsewhere. Yes. But I'm looking at, you know, can I sell it? And if I can't sell it, then no matter how, if it's really good, I'll tell the author, look, I don't know if I can sell this or not, but I like it and I want to do it. And sometimes I have sold it. But that's a different question to start out with, you know, can I sell it?
Right. And it's a very good question. Really what you've described is the kind of, one of the things that we're talking about is the different models of publishing. You know, there's the big five, the big publishers, and of course they have just the one revenue stream of cash. And then there's the indies that have, or university presses, which are subsidized, you know, by universities. You have then the kind of you're an LLC, right? So you're a limited liability company.
Yes.
But so you just have the one revenue stream, which is sales.
Exactly. That's
and then you have nonprofits like Etruscan, which typically, you know, nonprofits, we don't make the majority of our money through sales, so maybe 25 or 30%. The rest is all grants, donations, and in-kind support. So there is a real different model. At some place, though, it meets, Gene, because in a sense, you get the LLCs like you and Akashic. You guys rely on sales, which is getting the money after the book has come out. Nonprofits still need money. They just get the money beforehand through donations or grants. So this money is still basically what's involved, but we don't. You're right in the sense that we can afford not to take books that we know won't sell very well.
Right.
Even if we think that there's some, you know, there's literary merit there. You know, and I think of your model saying, well, we'll do a Christmas play every once in a while, but we're also doing these experimental things where I'm taking a bigger risk. It's almost like a
balance it out. Something I think is going to sell, you know, okay, that's going to compensate for something that doesn't sell. And then sometimes I get surprised and something that I think, that'll really sell. And then something that I think is, well, it's good, but you know, who's going to buy it? And suddenly people are buying it. So I cannot predict. I cannot tell you what will sell actually.
Right.
I can take a guess at it, but I am certainly not always right.
Right. It's like a stock portfolio.
It is.
You know, you want to have some of these, you want to have some of these. and so on and so forth. You know, Jean, you mentioned also that you're moving also into spoken word now. And of
Yes,
course, there's a real obvious connection there between
sure.
theater and spoken word. But how do you get that on the page? So, you know, how do you render this oral experience
I
without?
think pretty much the way I think pretty much the way you set up a book of poetry. I do a lot of Bob Arthur's poem plays, for
Okay,
example. Remember Bob?
sure.
And you know,
Sligo.
Sligo, yeah, yeah, he was a wonderful Sligo. And so he has, and his poem plays, I think he coined that term. And those are plays that are made of individual poems that are sewn together to tell a story.
Okay.
But they're all original poems, you
Yes.
know. So and we just published one that he and Carolyn Kreider-Ferranda did together.
Okay.
She was the poet laureate of Virginia for 4 years, I think. And so Bob and she got together and sort of wove together some of her poems into a kind of love story, love play. And so it's a beautiful piece, and we have sold a few of those. So
Do you have when you make that into a book? Um, do you also have a companion, either web page or audio book or something? You know, I know, for instance, in the old days, we thought this was very innovative. But Galway Kinnell is a poet, and in one of his books there was a CD in the sleeve back in the day of, you know, say, of CDs. And so that was thrilling because, you know, you got this CD and you put it in your CD player and you listen to Galway Kinnell read the poems. Of course, nowadays, I mean, it can be done through
right.
the internet.
No, we haven't gone that direction yet, but it's a really good idea.
Well, to me, the question I would ask is, yeah, you know, Galway Kinnell, and that was an unusual thing, but at least it could be monetized. I mean, he
Yes,
could add another dollar to the cost of the book
exactly.
because of the CD, and it was an attractive thing. But nowadays, when spoken word and so much else is just available on YouTube, how do you monetize that going back and forth? You know what I mean?
Well, surprisingly, I do sell some CDs because I do also publish some musicals.
Oh, okay.
So we have the music tracks for those, and to my surprise, some people putting on musicals don't have anybody there who reads music. So I just had to go to, well, do you remember Cindy Lugalecki, who was a playwriting student
No.
at Wilkes? Well, I published a little short play of her short musical called Royalty about the fairy godmother retiring. It's a cute little piece, and it's a musical. And I had the sheet music to it, and I just advertised the lead sheets, but I didn't have a CD. And they came back to me and said, "But how are we supposed to know how it sounds?"
All right.
So I called Cindy and I said, "Can you have your composer make a CD?" And so we did.
Very
And
good.
so now we have a CD, and they do sell. The
Okay.
musicals do sell CDs. They might go as an add-in to spoken word things.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, we should continue that conversation because Etruscan is actually going to be doing a spoken word poet, Angelique Palmer,
oh
in
well, let's
2021. And, you know, so we're trying to think of ways of, you know, integrating the performance aspect with the literary aspect. Um, the last question I want to ask you is the $64 question, Gene, which is, I'm wondering about your publishing experience as it relates to your experience as a playwright. Has it been augmenting for you? Has it been inspiring? Has it been inhibiting? What would you say about that relationship? Right, the writer half, the publisher half.
I think all of the above. It's where it's inhibiting. It's inhibiting because it just takes up time.
Yes.
I have to be concerned about matters that don't actually intrigue me. Like well, just 2 days ago, we were going along selling at a nice rapid clip, And then suddenly our traffic went from like 1,000 a day to 32.
Hmm.
And sales stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, you asked the question why. It turned out to be that we were, in fact, attacked, and that our site had been taken over,
Oh
and
no.
all of our links were redirected to other people's sites.
Oh no.
Yeah, so, but I've got somebody's working on fixing that now, and it'll be done in a couple of days, and we'll be back to normal. But that's that's the kind of thing that you face here. And when that happens, everything stops. And you stop and fix that because your income has suddenly gone. Now it'll be back in 3 days, but I have to spend time to do that. So it inhibits me in that way, that it's another must do that I have to think about. On the other hand, it has trained me to think about markets. So now as I'm writing, I think that I'm super conscious of who's going to go to see this, what theater is going to buy it, where am I going to position it in the market, how am I going to sell it. I don't think, when I left the University of Iowa, in fiction of all things, not even drama, in fiction, I mean, they just sort of kicked us out the door and said, go have a good life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
And so I was never geared to thinking about marketing. So having to do this for other people's scripts, and it's not that I don't think I change scripts or change concepts so much, but I'm sort of much more conscious of the audience and who's going to be watching, who's going to be buying a ticket, what's going to put the butts in the seat.
Right.
And not necessarily in a commercial way that I'll put something in just because I think it's going to sell tickets, but I'm thinking a lot more consciously and subconsciously about what's going to keep the audience glued in their seats that's pertinent to my play. What's going to rivet them so much that they, number one, want to come in the door, and number two, want to stay once they get there. So, and reading all these other scripts and seeing what's right and wrong about them, and finding inspiration from some and no-nos from another, I think it just gives me a whole different, I'm glad I did it. Let me put it that way. I think the pluses have outweighed the negatives, because the other thing it gives me is an entree to other playwrights who might be positioned in a place that's helpful to my career. So it's opened up avenues of talking to other playwrights in other places, and it's given me a reason to speak with them. So it's been it's been a great thing to do, I think.
That's one of the for me, that was a big transformation. Having been a teacher for so many years before I even got into editing at all. I mean, I'd done some ancillary editing, but of course, when you're teaching, you reach out and you meet the student wherever they are, and you work with that student, regardless of what, all you're interested in is them getting better. As an editor, when you're sitting with a big pile of manuscripts, you really aren't interested in them getting better, or them as people at all. I mean, you're kind of, you want to just get through this big pile. And I found myself a little bit like you're saying, unless the person got me going right away, unless the person got me interested right away, I gave myself permission not to read anymore. And
Exactly.
just because of the literal logistics of having to, go through so many submissions. And that was a real striking thing, because I began to realize people are reading my work in the same context.
Yes.
There's not a teacherly relationship or even a collegial relationship. It's, you better get my attention because there's a guy right next to you, and there's one over here, and there's a whole pile of them right behind. So I think that's a lesson for writers and publishers that or a crisis that we really have to.
And in terms of deciding which model you want, I think you kind of have to look at who you are too, because most people that I know now think of me as either a writer or a teacher, when in fact I haven't worked for anybody else since I was 30.
Okay.
I mean, I've never I didn't have a teaching job.
Right.
I did teach for a while, And then that market didn't seem to be very appealing to me back around when I was 32. And so I had my own consulting business for 20 years in group leadership and group dynamics and team development, as well as some technical writing and so on. So I was, I was that business. And so that's what I did for 20 years or so to earn a living. So I've basically always been in my own business, which was why starting a company that looked to sales for its main, source of revenue was not particularly scary to me.
Right, right.
That's just what I've done all my life.
Well, Gene, they may have kicked you out the door and tell you to have a good life, but by golly, you have.
I think I have. Heck, well, I don't know if you've looked at our site recently, but we've made a few upgrades to it, and we keep doing that and finding new things that we have to do, and keeping up with the Joneses is
Right.
a really scary game these days because things move so fast.
Right.
And the competition is out there, and we're looking for the same things. But it's fun to do. I have a good time doing it.
Gene Klein, my dear colleague, thank you so much
Great.
for this great illuminating talk.
Well, so good to talk to you.
We will meet again when such meetings are permissible.
Oh, please, 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 please. And by all means, I want to hear one of those Irish ballads again soon.
Sounds good. I never have to be asked twice.
I know you don't.
Right.
Really good to see you, Phil.
You too.
Okay, well, let's resume.
All right. Well, we're back. We said goodbye, but of course, as our meandering paths go, Gene and I, we started to talk and realized we didn't cover some of the things that we wanted to talk about. So we're welcoming Gene back.
Hi, back
after like a 10-minute absence.
Yes.
But Gene, you were talking about printing and POD. Tell us.
Yeah, we realized we hadn't talked about that at all, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but I suspect we have a whole different way to go about securing printers and printing products and so on. And I had started to ask you, and I don't think I got an answer with whether or not do you use print-on-demand printers, or are you at all concerned with that in Truscott?
We do. We do short print runs, and in fact, but that's part of that evolution that we're talking about. Back in the early 2000s, we did only offset printing, and we would have to. In fact, one of the conditions of publishing was we would tell our distributor and tell our author that we were going to do a certain print run, and that was like the muscle behind the book. In other words, it was the bet. We're going to do a print run of 3,000 copies, which means that we're going to print 3,000 copies before we sold a single copy.
Exactly. And then you opened that, right?
And there it is. I mean, our first book was the perfect example, 9/11. It was September 11, 2001. We did a print run of 2,500. It sold out. Another print run of 2,500. It sold out. We got up to 10,000 books. And then they started to come back as returns. So we wound up losing a ton of money because of that return policy, but we couldn't make smaller bets because offset printing had a kind of scale where the more books you ordered, the less per unit.
Yes.
And all of this, there's an archaeologist who is exploring the basement of the office at Wilkes, where all those books now reside. It's like the library at Alexandria.
Repository of returned old books.
Thousands of old books. And that ends around 2007, 2008, because up until that time, the Lightning Source and Bookmobile, those small digital printing services, they couldn't compete with offset for quality, but now they can. And in fact, if I were to show you two texts, one from, and Thomson Shore, the offset printer, they're out of business.
Yes.
So everybody's going digital, and you can order, as you know, just 50, copies, and you can now. Our distributor tells us consortium tells us how many pre-orders, and we fill those orders. And that, so we don't carry a lot of inventory. I mean, we carry some inventory, but not a lot.
Yeah, and my inventory problem is almost is a little bit different than that, because you do carry some inventory. You know, you're ordering so many books based on your distributor. Well, I am my distributor basically.
Right.
And the reason I am my distributor is simply financial. If I try to go through something like a distributor, if I sell through Barnes and Nobles, if I sell through Amazon, which I do, but what happens is that they basically give me a royalty back on that book, or take a 60% discount.
That's right.
And I still have to pay the author the full royalty. So as a company, I end up making maybe, $2 on a book max.
That's right.
A couple of times I've lost money.
Yep.
I can't stay in business losing money. If I sell it on my site, then that triples.
Right.
Which means I can afford to go out and get more books.
And people don't realize that's the cost of Amazon. Obviously, Amazon is about convenience, and everybody has their account and their Prime and all of this. But to support small presses, you really have to order from the press. And that's true for us also.
Yes.
Now, I'm aware of that Amazon. It used to be called Amazon Advantage. And there's no advantage, because they have a bunch of accountants figuring out how much it costs you to produce this book, how much it costs you to sell it, and they'll just give you a little bit of a carrot on top of that, so you make $1 or $2 for that sale. And what I tell people, it's very funny. They'll only order, a lot of times Amazon will say, we got an order from this person over here. We're going to send an order to you, the publisher. You're going to send it to us. We're going to send it to them. Rather than let's cut out the middleman. And if that person, goes to you directly. Well,
check this out, Phil. There used to be a printing company, which I adored, called Book Surge. It started in North Carolina, I'm going to say in 2006, 7, 8, somewhere around there. And I used them for a long time. They were inexpensive. They did not have a setup fee. Good quality production. They were eventually kind of taken in as an Amazon company. And then they were eaten by Amazon, basically. They became, but it's called Kindle, not Kindle Direct Publishing, which is for the digital books. It's Kindle Enterprise Publishing. And what they did was take all of the publishers from Book Surge, which became CreateSpace when it went to Amazon. And everybody will probably recognize CreateSpace. And then CreateSpace became Amazon Enterprise Printing. Look into that, because I use Amazon only as a printer.
I see.
Well, I do have them on the site as well, but what I pay Amazon is simply the printing cost, which actually is the lowest and the best quality.
Okay.
So for me to buy, and I buy it through Kindle Enterprise, not through Amazon. If I buy through Amazon, I'm stuck paying list price.
Right.
But if I buy through Kindle Enterprise through my company, which is set up on there, maybe let's say a 50-page book will run me $2 max. So I do use them as a printer, but that's not the same thing as having them for sale on Amazon, which I do.
Right.
But you have to be really careful with the POD printers, because I go through them every 8 to 10 months, and you'll find one that will say, we're better than this one, So you go on there and you find out, oh, well, no, you really have to order 50, or you have to order 25, or you find out, oh, there's a $50 setup fee for each book, or there's something else. And so there are maybe 3 on there where there's no setup fee. The cost of printing is pretty good. Lulu is the one that I found on there besides Amazon. So there are 2 that I use mainly, and they do have worldwide distribution if you want to choose this.
Okay.
Lulu. And the quality is equal to anything that I've seen. Same is true for Amazon. They do a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we use Bookmobile, McNaughton Gun, Lightning Source, and we'll bid out the various, each book, each project.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah, I've looked at Lightning Source.
yeah,
There was
but
something about that I couldn't. It was more expensive for me or something.
and well, Bill makes that call. Bill Schneider, our managing editor, so he's pricing these out
Right.
on each project, and for reasons sometimes it'll be one will be better for a certain.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
it's like buying insurance. One day this is better, and the other day this next one's better. But what I was what I was talking about really in terms of Amazon is we don't deal directly with Amazon because our distributor consortium deals with them, and
Right.
because they have over 300 companies, they have vendor status.
Exactly.
So they don't have to deal with that Amazon Advantage program, which was exploitative.
Right.
So we
That's
actually
awful.
do,
I've explored that, and it's awful. But you do have to be careful because they change periodically, and you have to make sure that you're getting the same kind of deal. So I think we're basically doing the same thing in terms of working with printers. I may be looking for something a little bit different, but not much.
Right. No, I think the industry has changed to accommodate this new technology, and the technology has permitted the growth of smaller enterprises that don't have to invest in, say, an offset printing run of 1,000 or 2,000,
But you can put up a higher first run than I can. I mean, I want one that I don't have to buy one.
Right.
Because I don't know if I'm going to sell one.
Right.
So I don't want to buy any. I don't want an inventory.
Right.
So I'm looking for something that I just call them and say, I need one, and preferably one that will send to. And I also have a local printer that I use that does a better job than any of the source printers. And they're great for using saddles. If I want to use a saddle stitch, if I have a small play for middle school, or a play, a volume that runs maybe 30 pages.
Right.
A book of short monologues, for example. They do a tremendous job. It means I have to go over and pick them up, and send them out, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And the quality is excellent, and it saves me a ton of money to send it myself. The other thing to watch out for, by the way, with some of these printers that I found out, Amazon is relatively fair with their charging, with what they charge you for postage. But I went to one, and I really liked their quality. They were pretty easy to work with. And so I ordered something on there, and I looked at the bottom figure for one book, and I said, how did they get to $12 for a book that I can't sell for but 11?
Right.
And the print price was only $2.95. And I said, or less than that even. And I said, so I went and I looked at, well, number one, they had added a handling fee of $5, and then a postage fee of $4.
Right.
So you got to add up everything as you go through. So that's the part that I'm not always good with. But I do think we've gone the same route with printing.
Right. Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way.
I'm glad we did. Yeah.
and
you can use it or not as you see fit.
I will. I'll say goodbye again now, and I'm sure we'll start up again in another 10 minutes.
Okay. Take care. I'll see you soon, Phil.
Bye, Jean.
Bye-bye.